See, this is how kids get kidnapped because you're not believing your kid. And what if he had just snatched her and y'all didn't believe her? Hey guys, welcome back to Chaotic Commentary. Today we're going to be looking at some creepy encounters. Let's get into it. Story number 1, Hot Springs Sicko. This creepy encounter happened about 7 years ago when I was 14. I have since gone on hormones, but at the time I was a skinny girl with long blonde hair. Pre-transition, I would frequently attract the attention of strangers who would compliment my looks or act bizarrely, and it was always weird for me because I didn't view myself as particularly pretty or special. I don't say this to be self-deprecating, just to give some insight on how people I didn't know would interact with me and how uncomfortable it was. I would mention these occurrences to my parents, who would downplay my feelings and tell me I should be flattered. Ooh, I hate when people do that. Don't tell me I should be flattered when people being creepy. They're creepy. It's creepy. It's not flattering. Growing up in California, my family and I would take a vacation nearly every summer to the same town in Sierra Nevada. It's a known tourist spot with lots of local attractions, one of which is a facility that has hot spring pools. We had gone to this place on a decently busy day, and there were mainly families hanging out together and lounging on the deck. I went into the changing room with my mother and sisters, excited to put on a cute two-piece I had gotten at the Target in my hometown months earlier in anticipation of summer. I swam around for a while with my family, and at a certain point needed to get out to use the restroom in the women's area. To walk there, I had to cross the deck and head to the back corner of the springs. As I got out of the pool and started to head over, I got this strange feeling that I was being watched, and noticed an older man who looked to be around my dad's age, early to mid-40s, laying back by himself in the folding chairs, making very intense eye contact with me and giving me multiple up and down glances. See, this is why you don't tell people that it's flattering, because if she's 14 and he's 40, that's not flattering, that's predatory and disgusting. I felt every hair on my body stand up and scurried off to the bathroom to do my business. I stayed in there for a few extra minutes, breathing a bit heavy and working myself up over what had just happened, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting and that this man 3 times my age wasn't checking me out. I decided to leave the bathroom and told myself that I would just avoid looking at the man again to prevent getting freaked out any further. Unfortunately for me, when I started my journey back to the pool entrance, I saw that the man had turned his entire body toward me and was now photographing and or filming me with his phone camera. When I walked past, he turned with me and kept the camera on me the entire fucking time. I got very nauseous and quickly popped back to the pool to prevent him from capturing anymore. I immediately told my father about what the man was doing and how I noticed him staring at me, and he brushed it off, saying I was making harmful accusations and the guy was probably just filming one of his kids in the water. Why don't people believe their kids? I knew this wasn't the truth because I never saw the man interact with anyone else at the pool, and when he eventually left, pointed his camera at me a few more times while he exited. He didn't have anyone with him, nor did he follow any groups. See, this is how kids get kidnapped, because you're not believing your kid. And what if he had just snatched her and y'all didn't believe her and something bad happened? The last thing I remember was him looking like he was talking to someone on his phone while staring at me one final time before turning and leaving into the parking lot. I never saw that man again. Good. Thankfully, the entire incident still disturbs me to this day, and I wonder often if he really took photos/videos of me and whether or not they ended up online. I wish my father had at least said something, because even if the guy hadn't been using his camera to get images of me, he was still staring at me very aggressively, and it all made me feel more than just uneasy. Parents, please listen to your children when they say a stranger is acting weird around them. You never know what someone is doing that might be putting your child at risk or exposing them to some sort of disgusting purpose. True, why don't people believe their kids? What if something had happened to her and nobody believed her? Like, people really don't, like, and then people wonder why women feel so unsafe, because who the hell is out here protecting us if our own fathers don't believe us when we tell them there's something sinister is going on? Then what do we do? Story number 2, I always lock my door. So this happened many years ago. I'm not sure if it counts as an encounter, as there was no direct contact, but this has driven my compulsion to lock doors for my entire life. I never ended up telling my parents because my dad always used to flip out at literally anything. It was 20 years ago now, and I was finally allowed to go straight home after school with my younger sister being old enough, 10, my sister 8, to not have a babysitter anymore. That ain't, no, no. I'm sorry, but 10 is not old enough to stay home alone. my daughter will be 10 next year. You think she's staying home by herself? Nope. My older sister would generally arrive home very shortly after us, so leaving the door unlocked wasn't uncommon. It's not very smart though. That, and we honestly didn't think much about doing so when we got home, because who wants to do anything straight after school? Now, on this particular day, nothing seemed out of the norm. But thinking back to the walk home after school, I remember a mid-sized burgundy car had driven by us 7 or so times, always sort of slowing down when we would get to the corner of a new street. I know you only 10, but you didn't find that suspicious? Okay, so you said this was 20 years ago. So, early 2000s. I feel like at this point, I know like back in the 70s era, people was way too trusting, leaving their doors unlocked and stuff, but I'm pretty sure in the early 2000s, by that point, people knew better. Lock your door. I remember this part as clear as day. As we turned the corner, so did the car, speeding by us a little ways. We walked up to the house and unlocked the door. Greeted by the dogs, we went inside and I had a moment where I could hear my dad say, "Always lock the door, you never know when someone might try to get in." And I got the worst feeling in my stomach. Turned around and locked the door. If you remember, I mentioned my sister used to arrive shortly after us sometime. Well, not even through the first after school show, someone tries to aggressively open the door, grabbing the handle, turning and shaking hard. Not something my sister wouldn't do if we locked her out, but mostly as a joke, and I was in the kitchen so I couldn't see the door. I ran up to the door, swung it open, and there was no one there at all. Being a dumbass kid, even walked outside in the yard and checked with her. I freaked out, ran back in the house and locked the door again, and have locked my door every single day since then. It's been 20 years. I will never not lock a door. Not a day goes by that I dread what could have happened if I hadn't locked the door that day. Someone has made peace with their God. Someone was willing to accept the risk. We were kids, small kids. I am so thankful I locked the door that day. A couple days later, it hit the news that a man had let himself into a home a few blocks over, assaulted the occupants quite brutally, and ransacked the place. I sometimes wonder if it was the same person. Yeah, lock your doors. Number one. Always lock your doors. I don't care if you're at home, if you're in the house, lock your door. I always lock my door. Always. Number 2, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old are too young to stay at home by themselves. I understand parents have to work and stuff, but no, that's too young. I'm not even sure it's legal to leave a child that young home by themselves, so don't. Story number 3. I was approached by a strange man who knew a lot about me that I've never seen in my life before. Yesterday, while returning home from work, I was exhausted and strayed from my routine way to home and decided to sit down on a bench at the park. The park was empty at the time. Almost 5 minutes later, a young man, I'd say he was in late 20s to early 30s, dressed in a business suit, holding a briefcase, sit to the bench across me and started to occasionally stare at me. Later on, he got up and sat next to me on the bench and said, "How are you, Jennifer?" Now, Jennifer is not my first name, but I'll use it as a placeholder. He had a British accent and he was speaking in a very exaggerated manner. "Get up and run. Like, leave now. Why are you still sitting there?" I was surprised and thought this was someone from my college or high school that I did not remember at the time. And when I asked how he knew my name, he simply replied, "Oh, it doesn't matter," and then put his briefcase to his lap and clasped his hands on top of the briefcase. At this point, I started to feel worried and asked him again how he knew me, but before I could finish my sentence, he interrupted me and said, "I will get to that in a little while, but first let me ask you, are you satisfied with where you are living right now?" And then said my entire address. He then said, "What are your thoughts on your workplace? Are you satisfied with your wage?" And then he correctly stated my wage. Run away and call the police. Why are you still sitting here? At this point, I was starting to get really creeped out by him. At this point, not 5 minutes ago, and asked him who he was again, and he calmly replied, "It does not matter at this point/moment. I don't recall exactly what he said. Right now, what matters is I want to help you." He then went on to state a lot of personal information about me that I would think no one would ever know, and he especially knew a lot about my personal relationships, about people that I know. As he was saying all this stuff, I started to pack my things and got up from the bench and asked who he was and what he wanted in a worried manner. He didn't answer me and told me to calm down. I then yelled at him, asked what the F he wanted from me and who he was, and he didn't say anything, and he did this very weird thing where he rolled his eyes first and then slowly turned his head and his eyes behind as if someone was standing behind him and just said, "Very well then." The way he did that was very strange, like almost as if he was a character giving the camera a side eye and breaking the fourth wall. He picked up his briefcase, got up from the bench, and started to approach me. I tried to reach for the pepper spray in my bag, but he grabbed my arm and said, "No need for that," pushed me away, and I lost balance and fell to the ground. He then quickly walked away. I was really scared after falling to the ground and didn't know what to do for a solid minute. When I got back up, I went the way he walked away, but I didn't see him and decided to just get out of the park and go home. Go to the police station. The heck? Overall, his mannerism was very strange, and he used his hands in an elegant manner a lot when he talked. Like as if he was a theatrical actor, and as I stated before, he spoke in a British accent. I live in the US, and spoke theatrically as well. He was tall, very well dressed, clean shaven, had short slicked hair, and was wearing circular glasses. Another detail that I noticed was that he had this square pin on the lapel of his blazer. The pin was white and had a little black trident on it. I haven't went to the police yet, and I intend to ASAP, but I really don't know what to say or what evidence to provide apart from the small wound on my hand. Also, is there a place where I can ask for advice about what to do about the situation? Also, I apologize for the way I wrote this. My mind is a mess right now. And they shared this symbol. Was this like a cult or something trying to like induct you? Like, what in the world? That was creepy. Definitely go to the police, because what the hell? Story number 4. My grandma is apparently a silver fox. Is a silver fox like a cougar, but older? We live in a rural, small town. There was construction on the road adjacent to my grandma's house, and she's often outside a lot doing yard work. At midnight, she heard someone knocking on her glass back door leading to her backyard, which is mostly fenced in. She asked him who he was and what he wanted. She couldn't make out what he was saying to her, just woken up, didn't have the best judgment, and opened the glass doors to hear him. He said he noticed her outside and was wondering if she wanted to get naked and have some fun. She slammed the door, locking it, and called the police. Unfortunately, too, she stopped paying for her Ring subscription not too shortly before this encounter, so we have no idea who it was and no evidence of it. It was dark and she didn't see him, but said he sounded young. Thankfully, this turned into a funny story, but it could have ended so horribly. Now, me and my brother jokingly asked why he didn't come to our house because we're an attractive family. LOL, we live a block away from grandma. Yeah, that is creepy. Okay, so I don't have a Ring doorbell. I want one. I didn't know you had to pay for a subscription. Okay, last story. The time I almost got kidnapped. This happened nearly 20 years ago when I was 5. My family lived in a trailer park, and I basically had free reign to roam around as long as I didn't actually leave the trailer park. That's dangerous. One rainy day, a friend and I decided to meet at the playground in the center of the trailer park and hang out. Usually we would have stayed on the playground, but for some reason that day we felt like just walking around and seeing what kind of adventures we could get ourselves into. This ended up being an awful idea, and the adventure was not fun in the slightest. Why are people letting their 5-year-olds roam around a trailer park? I don't care if you consider it to be like your yard or what the hell ever. Are you stupid? Due to the rain, there weren't lots of people hanging around outside that day, so the streets we were walking down were pretty much empty. At one point, a car pulls up next to us. The driver was a kind of thin guy with a mustache. In the passenger seat was a much bigger bald man. We both looked old enough to be my dad. The driver rolls down his window and looks us up and down. Aren't you kids a little young to be walking around by yourselves? Yes. Yes, they are. Where are your parents? I should preface this by saying that at this point in time, I hadn't quite grasped the concept of stranger danger yet. I obviously smiled at him and replied, "Nope, my mom says I can go anywhere I want in the park." My friend kicked me, and when I shot around to ask her what her problem was, she had a serious look on her face and was shaking her head no. Luckily, my friend was way smarter than me and did already have a handle on the concept of stranger danger. The driver continues, "Well, you might get sick if you stay out in this rain too long. Why don't you let us give you a ride home?" My friend shook her head at the man. "No, thank you." At least your friend's smart. I mean, she ain't that smart to be walking around like down the streets, but she's smart enough not to get in the car with a stranger at least. She then proceeded to grab my hand and started pulling me away, moving ever so slightly faster than our previous pace. The car slowly creeped next to us, the driver not giving up that easily. "Really, I insist. Wouldn't want you to catch a cold." My friend kept pulling me forward and without even looking at him replied in a slightly firmer tone, "No thank you, we're fine." She started walking even faster, me finally picking up on her energy and matching my pace to hers. Then we heard the car door open. I took a quick glance back and saw that the larger man, who hadn't said a word at this point, was getting out of the car. My panic mode kicked in. Run. As I shouted, I turned to start running through the grass in between people's trailers. I heard my friend running directly behind me. We didn't have any idea where we were running to. We just knew that we had to get away from those men. After a bit, we saw her teenage cousin's trailer. We sprinted to it and burst through the door. Luckily, they were home and it was unlocked. We locked the door behind us and frantically looked out the windows, breathing a sigh of relief as we saw no sign of the men or their car. My friend's cousin ran into the room and upon seeing us breathing heavily and clutching our chests, asked us what the hell was going on. My friend told her everything that happened. She told us to sit down on the couch and relax a bit. Just happy we were alright. We ended up staying there for a few hours watching Disney movies. Her cousin then drove us to our respective homes, telling us she doesn't want us walking around without a grown-up or a bigger kid like her anymore. I absolutely had no process to that. I never saw those two men again, and at the age of 23, I still sometimes lose sleep wondering what would have happened if my friend hadn't been so smart or if we hadn't been able to outrun that man. Right, because you seem like you might have gotten in the car. I don't know. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you found that entertaining. Tell me down in the comments what you thought about these creepy encounters. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time, and don't forget to subscribe.